Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. James!
Hello!
What up?
Nice to meet you finally. Sorry.
Nice to meet you too.
About all of this.
Don't worry about it. All good. Listen,
I have to
sure. How about you sit?
Sure.
I was thinking, let's make a portrait. It'll be kind of funny.
Sure.
So that's what your face looks like.
Yeah,
nice
I
to
know.
meet you, man. Okay, so we got this. Lean over. And I'll just point at you and you'll be like, so funny. And no, it's all fake. It's all fake. When does the photo get taken? I'm in the padded room. I'm in the padded cell. Why am I in a padded cell? Because I can't get out here unless I get 1,000 subscribers. So please subscribe to the podcast and then maybe they'll let me out. And to celebrate, I'll eat a whole Carolina Reaper and film it so you can laugh at me. So please, subscribe, share. Help me get out of this padded cell.
I think my answer has changed over the years. When I started, it was gadgetry. It was a gadget, like a piece of technology that I could play with. But as I've kind of mastered the basics, I think now it's more of a creative exercise. And so I just view it as a tool for making still images, basically. So that's what it is to me.
Excellent. Nice. James, how do I say your last name?
Rodkey,
Rodkey.
like it looks. Rodkey.
Rodkey. Where's that from?
I think it's German. It seems anglicized. I think Radke, R-I-D-K-E, is the German, like actual German version. Like I'm from Pennsylvania, and everyone there is German. So, yeah. So I'm pretty sure it's from somewhere in Bavaria, probably.
Got it. James, thank you for coming on the podcast. It's like going to a proctologist. It should be painful. It should be okay. There'll be a bit of laughing, nervous laughter. Hydrate. It's good. Here's what's great. This is the third episode being recorded in this fantastic space. Rachel lent us her art space. So again, we're surrounded by her art, which is such a nice backdrop.
Evocative.
Well, okay, evocative, sure. So we don't necessarily have to talk about her art because we're here to talk about your art. But
who was the third? I'm the third. Who was the second person?
Samai.
Oh, she did here as well?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Did you get to meet her?
Yeah, I know Samai.
Nice.
Of course. We go way back.
I don't know. Nice. Well, let's just dive into the first photo.
Sure.
Okay. Do you want to describe what the viewer? So somebody who's listening to this, it's a podcast.
Yes.
So they can't really. How would you describe the image of what they would see?
Right. So the photo is titled "Field of Dreams," which is makes it seem more grandiose than the image actually is. It's just a picture of a baseball diamond in a park. That's it. So it's from behind home plate. It's a pretty wide angle shot, blue sky, green field, and that's basically all it is. It's actually a stock photo that I took. So
okay,
yeah, that's what it is.
Okay. So let me also describe now what I see. Okay, I'm just spinning the laptop around. Okay, so Field of Dream. Okay, Dreams. It references the movie, or I guess there must be a book written, Field of Dreams. I have no idea, but the movie for sure. Yeah?
Yeah, of course.
The bottom, so if we split the photo in half, the top half is the sky. So far away you can see trees. They're quite dark green because of the exposure. The sky has some clouds. It's mostly, cyan with white and all that kind of stuff. So it's sky. And then the bottom is like a well-tended, well-kept baseball field. The actual mound, which is earth, so it's got the brown color, and it's outlined with a white chalk. And do you know if it's chalk or if it's... Do you know baseball really well?
Well, I mean, is that really a baseball fact to know if the chalk is chalk?
No, I don't know. But did you play baseball?
Yeah, I did.
As a kid? Okay,
Of course.
okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's probably chalk. I assume it's chalk.
Okay. Did you ever snort it?
No.
So how do you know? Okay, so you're discovering that I'm an idiot. Okay, well, you have great teeth.
Thank you. American. Baseball, teeth.
It's beautiful teeth. Okay. Yeah. So the shot is of it. Basically, it's very symmetrically shot. So I can see what you mean for as a stock image, but in a way like it's all just well composed, well balanced. The grass is really rich and green and really manicured. But, because of who I am and what I'm like, I immediately ask, okay, why? Why start the conversation with Field of Dreams?
Right. So it's because of how I got into photography and how I learned about photography. So I didn't grow up with anybody who was really a photo buff or anything. I didn't grow up with film photography. It was, for me, a camera was maybe when I was younger, a little disposable one you might take on vacation or something, get it developed at the 1 hour photo. But I never carried a camera around, nor did anybody in my family. So it wasn't until I was at the end of high school, like beginning of college, that I even cared about photography at all. And my avenue in was the digital route, right? So film hadn't interested me at all. But as soon as there was digital photography, I was kind of a computer nerd. So now that I knew I could take a photo and put it on my computer and run it through Photoshop and do whatever I want with it, send it to people, whatever, then all of a sudden photography became interesting.
Okay.
So I was obsessed with like those early Sony digital cameras that had like 3 megapixel sensors, the little compact digital ones.
Sure.
So I started out with a couple of those and just upgraded a couple of times to get like the next better one. They were growing by leaps and bounds at that point. So I did that for a little while until I got my first SLR. So that was like maybe 2003, something like that. Mm-hmm. Just like an entry level Canon, digital Rebel as they call it in the States, with a couple of like crappy Sigma lenses from eBay, right, just to get me started. And I had no idea what I was doing. So I had no formal training. I never took any courses, anything like that. I didn't really have any close friends or family members who knew a lot about it. So I was really on my own, just trial and error, trying to figure things out. And so I don't remember how I got into stock photography, but I found iStock Photo, which was a relatively small stock photo company at the time. They're now owned by Getty Images, so like they've been bought by the conglomerate. So I don't know how I found, but it was interesting because I was like, I can make money doing this. And it was early enough that everybody didn't have an SLR and everybody wasn't shooting photos all the time. Yes, the market was not saturated as it is now. So it was possible to do it back in the day. So I got involved in this website, went through their like kind of crash course training program. And then I just basically like learned to take photos by this vetting procedure that they had because it's stock photography, so it has to be perfect, right? Because if it's not, they reject it and send you sometimes like a list of reasons, things you have to fix. Sometimes if you fix them, you can resubmit it. Other times it's just like, this photo sucks and we're not taking it, so try again, right? And they get pretty angry if your rejection rate is very high. Sure. So you can't just, flood them with images because someone actually has to look at it and, take the time to give you feedback and like take it into the collection or reject it. So basically by going through that vetting process, I learned how to make good, clean, well-composed images because they had to pass through this filter of somebody saying, we'll accept this into the collection. So I did that for years. And this specific image, for whatever reason, was one of my most downloaded ones. I think I made several $1,000s in royalties on this image. And I used all that money, I put it back into gear and just bought better cameras and better lenses and everything.
James, I had no idea. This is what I love this. I love this. Okay, so I'm going to interrupt for a second.
Sure, please. It's a conversation.
Excited. It's a conversation. Is that how podcasts work? My goal is to make that Pocari Sweat come out of your nose from laughing. Okay, so for those who don't know, Pocari Sweat is it's like Gatorade or whatever. Yeah. And in Asia it's very big. And it's just weird for us to kind of look to buy a drink as a thirst quencher.
Yes.
That's called Pocari Sweat.
Yeah, it's a terrible name.
Yeah. Well, for us. I'm a photo nerd, a photography nerd. That's the main sort of entry point of the podcast. And I have known a lot of professional photographers. I have, photojournalists and all this thing in terms of how they've come into photography. Myself, my own story of selling and doing, using or monetizing photography, whatever you want to call it. You're the first person I know for me, it's an awakening. I'm just like, that's amazing. Okay. So this is how you learn. Like, it's like School of Hard Knocks in terms of the commercialization of it. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, very much so. So yeah, I got a lot of my basic education basically like responding to feedback that I would get from rejected photos, where they would say, it's not good for these reasons. Try to improve these things about it, and then I would go back and try to figure out if I could do that.
Wow.
And that's how I learned the basics of exposure and like ISO, because you can't shoot high ISO images for stock, because if it's noisy, they won't take it. Right? Yeah. It's useless. So anything above like ISO 400 at that time they would just reject it out of hand.
Sure.
So, I had to learn to use a tripod and get faster lenses and all these things that would, improve low light photography and work on composition and like really all the basics. It ticked all the boxes. So yeah, it made me learn.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I chose this image because it really just illustrates how I got better at photography. So the gadgetry got me into it, but like trying to make money as a stock photographer, that's really what taught me the craft, at least in some aspect of the craft.
Right.
Stock imagery is a very specific type of imagery, so it's not like you learn everything about photography from that, because it's very sanitized and kind of commercial.
Yeah.
But it helped me a lot. So that's basically how I got my start. And I was able to also finance buying, because photography is an expensive hobby, right? And I didn't really have a full-time job or anything. Then I was like, college student, high school student. So finding thousands of dollars to, buy full frame gear and L lenses and things.
Did you ever bump into one of your photographs in your life in terms of how it was used, and you're going, oh, wait a second?
I think it was kind of hard to do that, although if it depended on what kind of license the image was purchased under. So sometimes if it was a big order, like someone purchased maybe the license to reprint the image like 100,000 times or something, then you might be able to see the contract and maybe from there glean the information from maybe where it would appear, so I could go find it maybe.
Right.
But I don't think I've bumped into any of my photos just in the wild anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's perhaps I've seen them and just not really noticed it, picked up on it, because it's all very generic kind of stuff where like my stock photo could be indistinguishable from somebody else's of the same kind of thing.
Okay.
So, yeah, but it would be neat.
I could see how this photo, Field of Dreams, the basket, so it's what's interesting to me is that the mound doesn't look pristine. Like, it doesn't look like freshly brushed or whatever it is, because the earth looks like it's been stepped on, but not too much. So it's just funny. So I could see how this image would tick the boxes for like annual report or a website for whatever it is, So yeah, it's fascinating. I had no idea. This is great. You want to stay on this one, or you want to move on to the next one?
Well, just a PSA for anyone who wants to emulate my success. It's not possible anymore.
Yeah.
So, like I said, iStock, it still exists, but it's been bought by Getty, and it's been pretty well gutted. The forum used to be like a fun place to be. It was a cool little hangout for like people who are trying to make a living. I suppose there are probably a few people in the world who still do make a living doing stock photography, but at this point, you have to have a studio. You have to be shooting really specific things for really specific clients.
Right.
You can't just kind of walk around and take pictures and upload them anymore. There's just millions of photos in these collections, and it's just too hard. So I was lucky that I was able to do that at the time. So I was very, very fortunate. Yeah,
because one of the as you were talking to me, the one thing that occurred to me was that over time I could imagine plotting a graph of the income over time, in that the more people go into it, the more people you're competing against, which means the harder it is for your photos to get chosen. And then over time, so when did you start?
I think probably around 2003 is when I got in. So yeah, pretty early on as far as digital SLRs and everything go.
Okay.
So yeah, in those first several years, maybe first 4 or 5 years, it was pretty fruitful.
Wow.
Yeah, but then the collection really did grow exponentially.
So
like they do.
At the time, you were in Las Vegas?
What?
No, where did that come from? No, sorry. I get these flashbacks.
All right.
Okay, so no, but at the time
I've never been to Las Vegas.
Okay, but at the time you were in what city?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I was in York.
York, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Okay. How big of a city is this?
It isn't. It was technically the first capital of the United States of America. That's fun trivia. So
Okay.
that's a real thing.
York, first capital.
First capital.
Got it.
Yeah, but that was only so that like the redcoats wouldn't burn down Philadelphia. We were
Right.
just kind of moving it off to the side.
Okay.
Because it's fine if York burns down.
But you started in York.
Yeah.
Okay, and then where did your journey go? Like, how did you were photographing there for a few
I think
years?
this would have been my undergraduate. I was a college undergraduate. So I was at Pitt, University of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So yeah, just transiting back and forth over summers and everything. So
Wow.
I was in the Pennsylvania area.
What were you studying?
Classics. So I have both of my degrees are in Greek and Latin. I'm a Latin teacher. I know.
Are you a Latin teacher now?
Yeah,
In Hong Kong.
I taught Latin this morning to children.
The man teaches Latin in Hong Kong. You're gonna have to bust out some Latin. You want to do it now or later?
I don't have to.
Well, okay. Say I don't have to in Latin. Can you say that?
Necesse non est mihi. It is not necessary for me.
Great. I can't stop smiling. Okay, great. This is awesome. Shall we go to the next photo?
Sure. I forget what it is, so you're gonna have to remind me.
Kopan Monastery.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's a good one.
What?
It's a good one.
It's a great one. I love it. So let me describe it. So the format is more of a. It's not quite a panorama, but it's a very wide shot, very wide scene. Cropped that way, or that's.
It was shot as a multi-pano kind of stitched together in Photoshop.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. It looks like it's in Italy. What country is this?
If that's Kopan, it is in Nepal. It's in
Nepal.
It's Kathmandu.
See, I am absolutely dumb. I remember.
In fairness, the monastery looks different from the rest of Kathmandu.
Okay. Just the colors. Okay, but anyway, so now that you say Nepal, I can see some of the little anchors. But it's like you're standing on the top of a hill, looking down across the sort of garden grounds with fountains and stupas. I guess those are stupas. And on the right, you have like a white building. I guess this is what made me think of Italy, white with sort of cream trim, I guess. And they're below, down the hillside. It could be villas, but it's trees. It's coniferous trees, deciduous trees. And then in the back, you have a large city. So do you need to look at the photo, or you can remember? Like, why would you put this as this second image? Is this a stock image, or is this a completely different?
Nope. This is much more recent.
Okay.
So, this is probably more in line with the sort of things that I shoot these days. I like landscapes, especially, multi-image stitches. You can do a lot of cool things. It's very easy to do now with software. So, it's good because I shoot micro four thirds now, which is a very small sensor.
Right.
So, to get more resolution, sometimes you just need to shoot with
Are you an
more
Olympus
frames.
man?
Yes, I am. Yeah, Panasonic
Nice.
can go to hell.
Okay. We have strong feelings. Yes.
Although Olympus doesn't exist anymore now, they're OM Solutions. They've
Oh, okay.
rebranded, so
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
there is no such brand as Olympus. They're gone.
Okay.
Sadly.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this scene. I suppose it also we can depart a bit from photography for the moment if you want to, because it's more about travel
Let's
and
just
about
talk-
living in
let's
Asia
just talk, yeah.
and all that sort of thing. So. I do love to travel. It's basically the main reason that I left the U.S. was, not that I wanted to be away from America for any particular reason, just that I wanted to see the world and,
Yeah.
do other things and places and all that. So I like to travel, and being in Asia, it's very easy to get to all kinds of crazy places. So when I first showed up in Hong Kong in 2013, I was dashing off practically every weekend to wherever I could I could find, and so fairly early on I made a journey to Nepal. I didn't do it in a good way. In fact, it was a stupid idea, but I didn't know any better. So I basically just went for a long weekend to Nepal, which is far enough away that you shouldn't do that.
Okay.
And I also didn't experience any of the hiking or the mountains or all the reasons that you actually go to Nepal. I didn't have a guide. No Sherpa.
I have to interrupt for a second because
Sure.
do not beat yourself up, because one of the best things, when I moved to Hong Kong in 2003, so when you were starting your journey in photography or stock photography, that's when my wife and I landed in Hong Kong. And one of the reasons why we picked this city above all the other cities was its place. And how far is the flight? 6 hours?
At least, yeah.
Okay.
It might even be more than that. I think I stopped over in New Delhi, so I couldn't even. You can't go direct from here, obviously. So yeah, it was a bit of a hike.
So one of the ideas of us coming to Hong Kong was that, look, it's it's such a hub and it's such a great place to be in. So you went for a long weekend to Nepal. Super rock star maneuver, right? For one of my birthdays, my wife took me to Manila for dinner.
Yes.
Like we went for dinner and came back. Like how it's just kind of, anyways. Yeah. Back in the day when we could travel.
Yeah, of course. Tier.
So you went to Nepal for a long weekend, and how would you convey to somebody who's listening to this, like if you were to put a seed in their heads to say, yo, the world is humongous and beautiful and whatever you want to say, like whatever drew you out into the world, how would you shape that seed?
I think after I came home and I was just, ruminating on the experience and everything, the one thing that really stuck with me was just the idea that Kathmandu was a real place that you can go visit.
Wow.
Like growing up in America's very insular. We have everything we need. There's really no reason to leave, so most people don't. So, I hadn't traveled a lot growing up. And so someplace like Kathmandu, Nepal just seemed like an abstraction. Yeah. It's like, okay, I can see photos, but clearly there's no such place and you can't go there. Yeah. Right. But it is a real place and you can go there. And I did. Yeah. And so that was the most interesting thing to me is that, if you'd told me 10 years prior that, I was going to visit Kathmandu, I would have been like, okay, first of all, where's that? And second of all, no, I'm not.
Over a long weekend.
Right. Yeah, exactly. By myself from Hong Kong where I live.
Such a porn star.
It's just silly. So, but the trip was not restful at all.
Okay.
Kathmandu is crazy. Yeah. It's absolutely bonkers place. Yeah. I couldn't believe that this is their capital city.
Okay.
Right. And it's on fire. And I was there right after the earthquake, so everything was even worse than I suspect it wasn't great before, but it was even worse then. They were rebuilding it literally as I was there. Right. They were passing stones around and rebuilding everything. But it's noisy, it's dirty, it's chaotic. Yeah, it's bustling and busy, and it's interesting and vibrant, and I think relatively safe. It was an interesting experience, but it's absolutely chaotic and nuts in the city. Yeah. So I spent a few days just kind of walking around. I didn't really have a good plan. I was by myself. I was just looking down interesting streets, wandering, walking as far as I could, and just seeing if I could stumble on anything interesting. And then I think maybe in one of the few moments when the Wi-Fi worked at the hotel, when the power was actually on, I just tried to look up interesting things to do within the city, and I found this Kopan monastery. And I think it might have been my last full day that I was there, and so I got a taxi to take me up and leave me there for a while. And it was just, the experience was so starkly different from everything else. Right. Because it's at the top of a hill, as monasteries tend to be. Yeah. And it's like you see in the photo, it's completely serene, tranquil, calm. Yeah. There are little monk kids in their robes running around. It was quiet. Mm-hmm. It was everything that Kathmandu isn't. Okay. So the juxtaposition of those two scenes was just incredible to me, that within the city you could have these two extremes. So, it was my favorite thing that I did while I was there for sure. Okay. And it was the best time that I spent. I'm grateful for the chaos and everything that I experienced, because it was great to be in that environment and to have those experiences. But, even after just a couple of days, getting away from it, I needed a vacation from the vacation, and that's what the monastery was. So I think that's my lasting memory from that ridiculous trip that I didn't plan out well, but I got this one good shot out of it that I really like.
No, it's stunning.
Yeah.
So the podcast is a reflection of where my interests are, and I kind of ask people to join that I think would be interesting, and then we kind of start finding where are the overlaps. So a lot of people shit on their countries by saying, well, people don't really travel. Well, maybe people in Europe aren't like that, but most people in Canada don't really leave. Yeah. And most people in the US don't really leave. And most people tend to be based in where they are. Yep. And something about your brain, your DNA, your experience sort of said, well, I'm going to look beyond. And within Hong Kong attracts all people who have that in them in a way. Like, it was like that for me, it was like that for you, it was like that for Rachel. And then you have this impulse to go to Nepal. Now, have you been back? Have you? Like, how many times have you been to Nepal?
Just the once.
Okay.
Yeah, I should absolutely go back whenever we're allowed to do that again. Because it would be good. It would be nice to go back and not stay in Kathmandu the whole time.
Okay.
You know, I'm not really a mountain climber, but certainly getting out,
Sure.
you know, and doing some of the more nature-based things, I think, would be that's the principal reason people go there. I think.
Yeah.
So if I go back, I think it would be probably to have a very different experience.
Yeah, of course. You want to move on, or do you want to stay on this one?
We can move on. I have absolutely no idea what the third photo is.
That's
so.
totally fine.
Yeah.
We're both discovering it. That's great. This is Lago di Como. Now, this is definitely a more panoramic image as far as the dimensions and proportions. Is this a stitch image as well?
Probably.
Okay. So essentially, the image it's on a overcast with sunny breaks, so you can see a little bit of sky. The image is dominated by the hillside or mountains. Like, there's no snow on the peak. I could imagine that in the winter maybe there would be snow, but it goes down pretty sharply down to the water's edge, and so when you photograph this, you are the photographer, yeah?
Yep.
So when you photograph this, you must have been on some kind of boat, because there's, let's say 1/5 or 1/4 of the image at the bottom is it saltwater or fresh?
Fresh.
Oh, it's a lake.
Yeah.
Okay. Lago di Como.
There you go.
Lake. There we go. There you go.
You got there.
I'm just a little slow. So do tell. What am I looking at?
Yeah, so that's Lake Como in Italy. I suppose a lot of reasons.
Vaffanculo, you're going to be cutting me. Okay, that's good. Okay,
very good, yes. We're going to have to bleep that, but yes, good. So I think Italy was probably in many ways my window to the rest of the world.
Oh.
So yeah, the first time I really left the U.S. Was in high school with my Latin class, as you do.
Right.
So I studied Latin in high school. And when I was in 11th grade, we went to Rome.
Wow.
And yeah, up and down southern and middle of Italy, and that was really my first. It was my first time in Europe, certainly.
Wow.
So that was really my first taste of something completely different from what I knew, and so I think probably from there I knew that I was going to go back and keep seeing Europe, at least, if not the rest of the world.
It must have been. So you're how old? 17? 16?
Yep, 17.
Yeah. So it must have been something pretty intense. Like, in classrooms, you're studying, you're getting the story and the language, and you're getting that immersion in the language. Okay. And within that language are the fables and whatever if it's Latin, it's going to be the anchor to Italy as well, and all of that. And then you guys go there, and so you go there on the one hand, as an immersion in terms of the language and the culture and the geography, but also the fact that you're coming from the States and you haven't seen something like this before. And then you went back to make this photo, right?
Yeah, I've been back to Italy a dozen times or so.
Okay.
So yeah, it started it's probably a lifelong obsession with Italy and Rome specifically.
Oh.
So yeah, it's kind of my second home.
Oh.
Yeah.
How do you say I love it in Italian?
Well, amo is I love. L'amo with a L apostrophe, perhaps. I love it. Mi piace.
L'amo. Okay.
Mi piace.
I love it. I love it.
Fantastico.
Okay. So we're framing so you understand curating a collection from your work doing stock photography. So even though maybe you didn't work as a curator yourself, you had to curate your work to make it sellable, all this stuff.
Yep.
I say to you, pick 4 photos. Let's use that to curate the conversation. So now we're in Italy. We're looking across this lake. Why, in your mind, do you have this impulse to bring us to this place?
Yeah, I think just Italy and travel to Italy, my experiences there have been a really big part of my life.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, first time was in high school. And then I think the following year, my senior year, we actually had an Italian foreign exchange student come to my high school in Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
His name is Federico, as any Italian would be called.
Sure.
And he's still a very good friend of mine. I talk to him still. So
awesome.
That's a lifelong Italian friend I made. And then when I was in college, my sophomore year, I went to study abroad in Rome. for a semester, and my apartment was just outside the Vatican. It was amazing. So I would walk home through a tunnel to get to my apartment, and as soon as you come out of the tunnel, you can see the cupola of St. Peter's Basilica.
Yeah.
I'm not Catholic or religious at all, but it's just a very striking
Sure.
place to to see. So I was there for 4 months, had a great time. It was such a great experience that 2 years later, my senior year, I did it again. So I went back to Rome, studied abroad at a different university for another 4 months, another semester. So that was great. But then, go for it. Yes, interject.
Have you ever been mugged in Italy?
No, but I know people who have.
Of course, of course.
Avoid the train station. Just stay away from train stations and you'll be fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. You see some useful information on this
top
podcast.
Yeah, in general, Europe doesn't have a lot of violent crime like here, but theft and that sort of thing happens quite a lot. So just tie down all your shit.
Yeah.
It's very important. But I've been lucky enough not to have that happen.
Okay. So, but you're saying you're across. Okay. So let me just again tie it to. Okay. So I've been to Jerusalem, and if you're talking about antiquities and stuff, there's that feeling of like psychically, it's something pretty powerful to walk down streets that are 1, 2, 3,000 years old.
Yes.
That you look and you're just like, okay, there's a corner store where you can buy whatever, and you look up and then there's like this architecture that people looked at 2,000, 3,000 years ago. So like you were saying in Rome, coming from the US, I could see why that would have an impact. Okay. Take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's an important point. It's difficult. Every time I go to Rome, I still feel this obligation to be odd, just because I understand on an intellectual level, the gravitas of everything that I'm actually seeing. The history that happened there. This was the city that ran the world, basically, 2,000 years ago for centuries. And it's such an interesting and important place. And when you look around. Rome, it's an even weirder case because in most cases, all the buildings, they haven't really, bulldozed the ancient stuff or built around it. They just built on top of it. Okay. So every building there has like an ancient foundation. And then when you get above street level, it's, apartments and things that have been built, more recently. But the ancient foundation is still there. It's not even like you have to try to look to find it or go anywhere. It's just everywhere. You can't get away from it. Yeah. So that kind of thing is amazing. I think one of my favorite examples of that, like a thing that I always marvel at that I can't not think about when I'm in Rome. Yeah. So there is a little place called Largo Argentina, and it's kind of a sunken little forum area, just like one square block, and it has some ancient ruins sticking up out of it. And it's most famous because it's in the city center, but it's also overrun with cats. There are like wild cats all over it, and you wouldn't know it standing there unless someone told you, and they should really put up a plaque or something. But right around that area is exactly or precisely where Julius Caesar was assassinated. Oh, wow. And again, there's nothing to mark it because it happened in not the Senate House where the Senate usually meets, but at that particular moment they were meeting in the Theater of Marcellus or the Theater of Pompey. Nearby, which doesn't exist anymore. Okay. But you can still see kind of the outline, the curve of the street where the building was, because they built kind of around it. So the building's gone, but you can still see if you know what you're looking for, you can know where you are. Precisely. And so every time I walk around there, I'm like, Julius Caesar was stabbed to death by his friends. Like near where I'm standing. Amazing. And that never not hits me. It's pretty incredible and Rome's just, filled with things like that. Walking around the Forum and the Colosseum and everything. It's an incredible place.
I had an epiphany this year about Italy. And tell me how full of shit I am, but maybe something here is going to ignite something. Okay, so I grew up in Montreal. I'm a Canadian Montrealer. Okay, Western. You're an American. Okay. So I've met a few Italians, and they're really conscious of the geography of Italy. If you're from the north, the south, and all this stuff. Okay, fine. Yes. Now, one of the things that I came to realize was that if you're born in Italy, it's in the same way as if you're born in Jerusalem or born in Israel. It's like you can't escape, in Israel and Jerusalem, you can't escape the religiosity of the city. Like it definitely seeps into everything. Yeah. Similarly, in Italy, you've got the whole history of the place seeped in everything, the arts, in the philosophy, in the language for sure. And coming from North America, we're somewhat. So I was thinking about this in terms of art, right? So artists from Canada for sure, Canadians are like this. Americans as well. We're not as shackled to the past, right? So in a way, it's
because
like,
we have no past.
well, no, but or it's a different. I think there is a past. I think in America, there's a lot greater emphasis on the American past, right? Yeah. In Canada, there's a lot more understanding recently of coming to terms with the First Nations or Aboriginal or whatever the term you appreciate. Past, okay, because the Canadian Western past is problematic for a lot of people, but it's relatively recent.
Yes.
So in terms of a creative expression, right? Like when an artist from Canada or from the US is there, they're kind of unshackled by history. Whereas like when I speak to Italians who talk about aesthetics, just for example, or philosophy, they have the Renaissance baked into the culture, into their history, So how I described it was I was saying it's kind of like you're shackled. You're not tied down, like you're leashed to this history that is so profound. And in a way, I've had a couple of Italian artists on the podcast, and I brought this up with them, and especially one guy. I think he kind of thought I was a bit of a kook or an idiot, whatever. But because you've done this trip so many times, so how do you interpret the aesthetic or the mindset that you bring each time you go there in terms of the baggage you're carrying compared to the baggage they're carrying, like all that stuff?
Yeah, I think, perhaps a related photo question to that is how do you keep taking your camera back to the same place over and over again and find new ways to look at that place and new things to shoot, right?
Sure.
Because, certainly every time I go back, there's usually a few years in between. Sometimes it's a very different occasion for me going there. And so it is fresh and new, and there's something different every time. While there's also, the fact that I've been there so many times before. So, I think it's tricky. It can be difficult to do that and to find fresh inspiration, I think, every time. I think whenever you go to a place for the first time, it's hard to avoid being a tourist while you're there.
Yeah.
Right. And have that. So you almost forget about your artistic expression. And you're just like, oh, this is an important, like the Eiffel Tower or something. Like, I have to take a photo of it.
Yeah.
It's much more difficult to try to photograph the building, one of the most famous buildings in the world, in a way that no one has before.
Sure.
Right. That's really the trick. So I think probably as we mature as artists, we want to be able to stand out, to do something different that people aren't doing.
Okay.
And it can be difficult to figure out how to do that. So I think every time I go back to Italy now, I very much feel that way.
Okay.
Where I'm walking around with my camera, but I probably take fewer and fewer photos every time I'm there.
But when you go back, are you going back to make photographs, or are you going back to connect more culturally, linguistically? Like, how are you going back, or what's drawing you each time?
Yeah, so to Rome in particular, I think I just have so many fond memories there. I just love the city at this point. Like, I know it pretty well. I'm comfortable there.
You should,
Yeah,
sure.
I can get around most of it, without a map, that kind of thing. I do like being able to practice Italian. My Italian's not very good. So it's good to have that excuse.
Okay.
Although every time I go back, the Romans seem to pick up more and more English, so they don't want to speak Italian as much.
Right.
So
okay,
that's a disappointment every time I go.
Okay.
Every time I go back.
Are you cold?
Yeah, we
Is the aircon?
Yeah, I think we're.
I don't want you to for G's. I don't want you to be cold.
That's fine. But yeah, photography, of course.
Right.
I think when I'm walking around Rome, I always have a camera on me at all times, just in case, right?
Okay.
Actually, one thing I have picked up on is old Fiat 500s.
Okay.
Because they come in every color of the rainbow, and so
Right.
I like trying to, it's like Pokemon. I'm trying to collect them all, trying to get one of every color.
Okay, like
So
photograph or car?
Yeah, photograph.
Okay.
Yeah, try to get a shot of every
That's
color I
interesting.
can find. So that is something that, because it gives me a reason to scan the scene anytime I
Okay.
turn a corner, see if I
Okay.
can find a new one.
Picture this. Where do you live in Hong Kong?
Kennedy Town.
they say? Where I used to live on Sand Street. Where do you live?
Just off of Victoria.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the middle of the night, you're out with your friends, having drinks, all this stuff. A punk like me breaks into your apartment, for whatever reason, is thinking to himself, I want to steal this guy's camera gear.
Yeah.
I figure out where in the hell this small place you've hidden all your camera gear.
It's not hidden.
Not hidden.
It'd be very easy to do.
Great, thank you.
You'd walk right out with it.
What would I find? Describe your kit.
Yeah. I have it obnoxiously laid out on a shelf because
Nice.
I'm kind of OCD, and it's so I think it actually slopes down from the tallest lenses on the left side down to the
love
camera.
it.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. You would be right to laugh at me. If you
No.
thought.
I love it. I love it. No, because it's a choice. Like it says, like for example, I have all my camera gear actually strewn in the house in 2 different places.
Yeah.
And it looks like I barfed it because
Sure.
that's just how my brain works.
Yeah.
But in your case, okay, so how much kit do you have?
Well, at this point, I think I have just what I need and not much more.
Oh,
So several years ago, because I shot Canon full frame SLRs for 10 years or something. And then actually it was the occasion of moving abroad that caused me to rethink my whole gear setup. I was like, now's the time to dump it all and do something else. So that's when Micro Four Thirds, they had just, Olympus had their original EM5 had come out. And it looked really attractive as like a smaller, more portable kind of camera, and a little bit cheaper as well. So yeah, I sold all of my Canon gear. I had loads of L lenses and everything. Just dumped it all, and just bought a much smaller Olympus kit that I basically still have. I upgraded the camera a couple times, but so I've got 3 zooms. I've got a telephoto, sort of a medium standard, and then a wide zoom. Those 3 zooms. I've got a 25 millimeter f1.2, very fast,
of course,
for portraits. That's 50 millimeters on a full frame equivalent. A couple of manual focus primes, a couple of lens babies for creative or macro stuff. And that's about it. So I've really just covered the stuff that I grab all the time. I don't like having lenses sitting around that I'd never use for anything, right? Because I've done that before, but I realized they just sit there, so I sell them.
So important tech question for you. Explain for somebody who is new to photography the use of a tripod. Why is a tripod a good thing?
Well, it's less necessary now than ever, but I think
heresy. No, sorry. Go ahead.
But still necessary in many situations.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the modern cameras have a lot of really good image stabilization.
Sure.
So you can get away with hand holding shots at like 1 second, maybe 2 seconds, which is insane.
Insane.
It's absolutely crazy. So, because before you would have had to shoot those things with a tripod, or find a steady, like a solid surface to sit your camera on.
Right.
But I think there are still certain types of photos where a tripod is absolutely essential. So first of all, if you want to plant the camera in a place and film movement, and it's really important that the camera doesn't move at all.
Sure.
You can really only do that with a tripod. If you want to do really long exposures for motion, like waterfalls, people like doing the cascading water effects. Anything longer than a few seconds, you don't really have a choice. You have to use a tripod. There's lots of other practical uses. I started shooting film. Actually, the last image will be about that. And so I scan my own negatives, and I do that with my DSLR.
Okay.
So I need a tripod for that, obviously.
Right.
So yeah, there's still lots of reasons why you want a good tripod.
Sure.
It's important to point out that a crappy one is basically like having no tripod at all. So don't skimp. Right? If you're going to get a tripod, get a good one.
Good.
Yeah, landscape photography, lots of things. So yeah, I have a very good tripod. Right. So, and I wouldn't be without it.
Lago di Como.
Yeah.
Perché?
Ma perché no?
Why? Why we have the photo now? I look at it now, I don't understand. It's like a great photo, but tell me more. Okay, so is it? How far away from Rome is this?
Quite, yeah. Como is up north. It's close to Milan.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a very different vibe. It's up near like the Swiss border. So it's. I mean, I don't know. Well, Southern Italians would say it's not very Italian up there.
Oh, okay.
It's much more German, Swiss, French. Sure. There's more linguistic diversity.
Okay.
It's a lot quieter. It gets colder up there.
Yeah,
so it's a very different vibe. It's hard to even tell that you're in Italy in some regards, actually.
Sure. Okay.
It's a part of Italy that I had never really. I haven't been to the north much. I've generally been Rome and south, which is a very, very different vibe, as you say. Like the north to south divide in Italy is pronounced.
Yeah.
So that was the last time that I was in Italy. I was there in I think 2019, maybe 2018. with my girlfriend who had never been to Italy. So
is this is this a shot of a town? Because I can see kind of small buildings.
Yep. Yeah. So Como is a giant lake with several kind of. It almost looks like a Y, like an upside down Y shape, but the shores are just dotted with these little towns.
Yeah.
And so you generally get around by ferry.
Okay.
You can drive, but obviously it takes way longer to get around. The circumference of the lake. So generally, if you're going anywhere, you're hopping along ferry. So it's all boat rides and
amazing.
With these little towns in the distance.
If you're cheeky, you could have convinced me this was in Nepal. Because, I mean, like the peaks and the hillside is this beautiful sort of... I love seeing slightly denuded, slightly naked hills. And there's one perfect peak right pretty much smack in the middle of the shot that is barren. And I imagine in the winter it's snow-covered.
Yep.
And, it's a beautiful, beautiful image. Shall we go to the next image, sir?
Sure.
Okay.
Do it.
Now, this photo is called double exposure, and there's a different feel in terms of the other images are a lot more clear in terms of what you see and what you think and what you can read. In this image, it's a black and white shot of, it could be two trucks next to each other, like the backs of them, or two containers, the backs of them with the sort of the mechanism to open or swing open or hinge open the backs. So it's a black and white shot. What I see as a first kind of pictorial sense is these like metal container, whatever, backs. And then because of double exposure, there's like an overlay of what could be ocean. I don't know if there's if the horizon of the image shows a town. It could maybe be. No, but now that I look at it, there's a ferry, I guess. And then the back of the spray of the ferry and behind. So I would guess this shot was made in Hong Kong.
It was.
Okay. And that was like a Hong Kong ferry. And since you live in Kennedy Town, I'm assuming you made this off of... Kennedy Town is on Hong Kong Island, for people who don't know.
Yep.
And so explain this image, please.
Yeah, so it's kind of to come full circle from the first image being how I got into photography. This one is more about what I'm doing now.
Okay.
So probably like a year, maybe 2 years ago, I got into film photography, as one, I suppose, does eventually, because these things are cyclical and it comes back around again. And so film's very popular these days.
It is,
with kids and whatever. Mostly hipsters, people who listen to vinyl records. It's the same crowd. There's a lot of the Venn diagrams too, concentric circles. So I've started getting into film, which has been an education. It's been a very crazy thing.
Expensive education?
Very expensive, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
that needs to be mentioned because it's not cheap.
Yeah.
Especially because I shoot medium format for no good reason.
No, listen, it's not for very many good reasons. But yeah, I'll argue with you till we're blue in the face. No, got it. So what camera are you shooting with?
I think that one, I have a Mamiya 645 AF. So it actually has autofocus.
What? You betrayal. No,
I know.
It doesn't matter.
Well, I went through several manual focus ones before that.
Okay.
And I have a second medium format camera.
Don't let me give you a hard time. No, Mamiya's awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. So I've got two medium format cameras. They're both 645. One's a rangefinder, which I had never shot with in my life.
Right.
So that's been fun to get to use. And the other one is this SLR. But they're both 645. Although the rangefinder is vertical orientation, it's portrait when you look through it. So they're very different cameras.
It's a different feel for sure.
Yeah, that's how I justify having both of them to myself.
Okay.
So yes, this was. I think I shot this roll of film. I decided to do double exposures on the whole roll just because I'd never really experimented with double exposure.
Yeah.
It's a really hard thing to get right because you really have to think ahead to two different frames and remember what the other one looks like, especially on film, because you can't see it.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't get to see it until later, and you can't find out if you completely screwed it up or if it went well
for sure
until you get it back. So I shot this whole roll of double exposures, and this particular shot I think was on what's called Instagram Pier, colloquially.
Okay,
it's like Western cargo ferry pier or something like
Okay,
that. If you look
okay,
at it
okay.
on
Yeah,
Google
yeah.
Maps, it was open and full of Instagrammers for the longest time, but they've actually shut it again, so you can't go there anymore.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of annoying because it was a good place to get these kind of maritime feeling
Right.
photos. So
Right.
yeah, the first exposure is of just a shipping container.
Yeah.
To get that kind of texture, right? That the metal and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other one is just looking out over the harbor towards the Kowloon side with the ferry passing through.
Is this by the swimming shed? You know, the pier, the Instagram pier.
Ish, yes.
Yeah, is that where people go swimming? I love that spot. So, beyond the fact that it forces you to be like beyond the exercise of shooting with film,
Yeah.
beyond the sort of the constraints of, okay, well, I'm going to impose this constraint on me to change the process of making images. Yeah, so beyond the actual behavior change, what is different?
The behavior change is a big one. I don't want to discount it. This is I think one of the main reasons. Like I did it as a challenge and also just something new. I think getting into film or switching to digital, if you're already just doing film, when you feel that you're stagnating a bit and you need a kick in the pants to go do something very different.
Yeah.
Changing format or changing your medium, I think, can be a really helpful way to do that. So that's the main reason that I did it, and it is very different.
Okay.
But one of the things that I've really enjoyed is just shooting different film stocks.
Okay.
And just noting how the colors are rendered, how the dynamic range is, what you can get away with, what you can't.
Right.
Shooting slide film, for example, which is not forgiving at all.
Yeah.
Or color positive film. Because every film stock has a different look. And so you can't just load some film in and then just go outside and shoot. I mean, you can, but you won't be all that happy with the results,
Yeah.
right? So you have to think, okay, I've got this film. It's good for these purposes. What could I go shoot that would really play well, on this type of film? So
Right.
it makes you plan out your shoots in a bit of a different way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because there's just more to think about.
Yeah.
And I think one of the craziest things about film is just that the whole roll has this one ISO rating and you can't change it. Right? So like once you load it in there,
Yeah.
you're shooting at ISO 200 or 400
Sure.
or whatever it is the whole time. And you don't realize on digital camera how nice it is to be able to change that setting.
Right.
Because then you can just shoot whatever, whenever. But with film, you really can't.
Yeah.
So you're locked in for that many exposures at that, and you got to get through it before you can do something different.
Right.
It's crazy. It's so restricting, and the fact that every time you pull the trigger, it's like $1 that's just gone out
That's
the
exactly
window.
right. That's exactly right.
It really makes you stop and think about what you're doing
Yeah.
and say, like, do I really want this frame?
Yeah.
Right. Instead of having $1, because
Yeah.
that's really the choice.
It
I'm
makes you a
making.
lot more. It makes you a lot more deliberate. Absolutely. It's a different process.
Yeah. I still very much feel like I'm learning,
Yeah.
feeling my way through.
Sure.
Because there's just so much to get around, and one thing I'm trying to get used to is like bracketing my shots, and not just assuming that I'm metering correctly and that it's going to look good.
Right.
Because if it doesn't, I'm not going to know that for like a week.
Exactly,
Right. And then
exactly.
I can't go back and shoot it. I mean,
Yeah.
I can, but the moment is kind of past at
Yeah.
that point. So it's really made me focus on exposure more than I have to with digital.
What you need to do next, after you get beyond this stage,
Yes.
is get yourself a nice 4x5,
Okay.
and then an 8x10.
You mean like large format?
Yeah. And
those
then
guys
an
I see with the
8x10.
hoods and like the little bellows.
Yes.
Okay.
And then, because then each time you trip the shutter, it's that much more expensive, and you're going to have to be a lot more thoughtful and there's an interesting thing about what happens in terms of your sense of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a photograph, let's just say at 125th of a second, is capturing 125th of a second of time onto this sensor, with this film, and then you look at it after the fact, and then that's what you're reflecting on.
Yep.
So how much is photography at this point in your life more than just a hobby?
I think, it's maybe always been, or for a long time has been more than just a hobby. It's very important for me to, I actually go back and look at photos I've taken often.
Okay.
For lots of various reasons. Sometimes they're just photos that I like and I like looking at them.
Yeah.
Other times it's because I want to reminisce. Like people will go through an old photo album for the same reason.
For sure.
Because I don't just keep photos that, I mean, I do delete quite a lot. I don't keep most photos. I probably err on the side of deleting something if I can't think of a good reason to keep it. But I've still, over the years, amassed, thousands of photos that I can look through at a moment's notice. So I think it's definitely more like I enjoy the act of photography. Like that's the hobby part, like getting out of the house, grabbing, either the medium format camera or my digital, and going out to a place and working really hard to come home with a couple of shots that I like.
Right.
Because I do enjoy the process, from start to finish, really, from conception to post-processing and showing other people and getting their reactions and all that stuff. So that's all great. But after it's all over, I do like the keepsake as well.
Yeah.
Like there are some photos that I'm proud of that I'm like, wow, I did that. That was, or I'll go back and look at an old photo, like some of my old stock stuff, and I was like, wow, I was really young and I had no idea what I was doing. And look what I can do now, right?
Well, it's a process, right, that you're kind of going through.
Yeah, so I'm glad that I still have, this range to reflect, because it really shows my development over the years, and that's something that I can look at, and I think that's more than a hobby as well.
How did Rachel and you cross paths?
That's
because
also interesting.
Because she, as a mensch of the arts, really, as such a kind-hearted connector.
Yeah, it's not how you would think. It's just complete serendipity, just coincidence, basically. So when I moved to Hong Kong, I moved here alone. I didn't know anybody. I'd never been to Asia before. I just took a job here, basically, sight unseen, and showed up. And so my very first few weeks here, I was looking for groups, like meetup groups, things to do. Just basically typing my interests as keywords into meetup and seeing if there are any groups around. And one of the first groups that I found was Hong Kong Skeptics, because I had been doing I was really into skepticism and science and all that kind of thing when I came. And so I figured, I'll find a group of like science-minded skeptic people. And so I did. There was a group called Hong Kong Skeptics, Skeptics in the Pub. They meet in the pub once a month and talk about science or quackery or whatever it happens to be. And so I found that, and I went to those meetings. And at the time, they were run by a guy named David Young, who is sadly no longer with us. He died of ALS a few years ago. But he had started that group. And so I got to know him quite well just by showing up every month. And I was actually there taking photos. So I would show up. No one asked me to, but I just, always camera in hand. So I would always show up and take photos and maybe like put them on the Facebook group or something. And so David noticed that I was taking photos there, and he said, hey, I run this other group called Hong Kong Stories. Would you mind coming over and taking some photos of our shows, of our monthly shows? So I don't know when that happened. That was probably 5 or 6 years ago now. So that's how I got into Hong Kong Stories, which is where Rachel is from, basically. So that's my connection to her. So I had to go back a few different ways through David Young. But yeah, it's because of him that I'm with the group at all.
James, thank you so much. I had no idea. And I didn't tease you too much about Latin. I've had one Latin course in my whole life.
One's good. It's a good start.
Yeah, it's a good start. But I'm not here to tease. I'm here to learn. I hope I've been a good student. I have really appreciated it. This is great.
It's been fun.
Good. Do you have a show coming up? Anything like that? Any books?
Tonight is Hong Kong Literary Festival.
Right.
Yeah, so by the time you hear this, it's already over. Sorry.
Yeah.
You listeners out there. But yeah, so I'll be shooting for Hong Kong Stories tonight. If anyone wants to see my photography, it's at jamesrodkey.com.
Yeah, wicked. James, thank you so much.
Of course.
Fist bump. Yeah, boom.
Bump it out.
Nice.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.